Oh my goodness, it is going to be a wild one today. Immigration, the avian flu, Anthony Fauci's friend. Stay with us. Okay, well, welcome to the beginning of the last days. My name is Laura-Lynn, Tyler Thompson, and it's great to be with you on this incredible Thursday afternoon. We are going to be talking to somebody from Ireland and get the down low on what's happening over there, and it's 9 o'clock at night, so we're going to get to him right away. And an incredible man, a journalist, an author, somebody who is very in the know about what's going on. And, you know, they basically say that if it's happening in Ireland, it's like a petri dish for the rest of the world. And so you're going to learn a lot about basically what affects the globalists, the elites, those that we cannot possibly understand what on earth they're thinking, how they're infecting and invading the entire world with their ideas and their agendas. So we're going to talk about that. I always like to start the show by reading from my dad's Bible. And, you know, I turned to Psalms 118 and I was, you know, it's very interesting. My dad has underlined a couple of verses that in and of themselves, like when I read it, I go, wow, that is very ruthless. Like David is basically praying for the destruction of other people. And when you go back, you can see that he is upset because these other people, they don't follow God. They're merciless, they're violent, and they're godless, and they don't care about David's God. And so basically, David ends up praying, and he says this, all nations compassed me about. So the nations were coming around him. But in the name of the Lord will I destroy them. They compassed me about, yea, they compassed me about, but in the name of the Lord I will destroy them. 2 verses kind of repeats itself. And you can see that all through these scriptures, David is wrestling with good versus evil, with righteousness versus unrighteousness. And I miss my dad a lot. I wish that I had known more about everything that he underlined so that we would have talked about it more. But my precious father loved having that Bible beside his chair and would read from it. I didn't know how important it would become to me to see the thoughts and the things that he underlined that he thought, you know, were important. So let's get right to our guests. A little bit later in the show, I want to talk to you about what's happening with the avian flu and the threats, and they're killing chickens by the thousands in Texas. And interestingly, some clips that give us a clue about where maybe those crazy people that think there's too many people on the planet and would love to see another pandemic that might harm populations, and what they're working on. It's interesting. We found some really interesting nuggets, and, you know, it makes you kind of go, wow, like we've got some bad people that are just pure evil. But on the other hand, I do like to laugh at their plans because they never work out. So far, it's always a mess, all right? We got through everything they've ever tried to deal us, and we're going to get through everything else. So there's a really cool guy. His name is John Waters, and he's an Irish columnist and author. He started his career with music and politics magazine Hot Press. He wrote a weekly column for the Irish Times from 1990 to 2014. He's written several books, among them the Whose Day book, which raised 3 million euros for the Irish Hospice Foundation. Much of his column space discussed the importance of religion and faith in society, and he was quoted as saying that people of faith are, I really like this, people of faith are funnier, sharper, and smarter than atheists. He's been part of a court action against the Irish laws dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic and is passionate about defending Ireland against mass immigration. So Ireland is a country, the population is 5,081,757. The previous prime minister was Leo Varadkar. Am I saying it right? And the current prime minister is Simon Harris. So we welcome you, Mr. Waters. Thank you very much for waiting in the background there, and we appreciate you being here today.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Nice to be with you.
Thank you. So yes, go ahead.
No, we're sort of between prime ministers in a way, or Taoiseach as we call them. The new guy hasn't been sworn in or whatever to do with him. I would swear I had my way. Before he even starts.
Is that right? Are you unhappy with the future choice?
Oh, well, I've been saying for a long time that, I hesitate to say that there could be anything could be wrong. It could be worse than Radker. It seems impossible. And now I kind of have to concede that they've done it. They've done it. They've found somebody who is actually going to be worse than Radker. And this is astonishing. It's an astonishing achievement of darkness in our country. But we're used to those kind of milestones over the last few years.
Wow.
So yeah,
it's a scary world.
It's like if people have seen that movie Being There with Peter Sellers, it's kind of like a malevolent version of Chauncey Gardner. That's what we got now, I think, in Ireland.
Wow. Well, it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. My good friend Ann Vandersteel, my husband says she's on the Rumble feed and she's heading to Mar-a-Lago apparently. So I just love her. She's a huge fighter in the United States, tells the truth, gets in trouble. And I just appreciate her courage, all that she does, as I appreciate yours as well. And so you have been standing up for Ireland, and we've been watching what's going on there, paying some close attention, and it does seem that our whole world is struggling with this problem. You have been concerned about mass immigration, and the United States, of course, has exploded. This is one of the concerns of Ann Vandersteel herself, going down to the border, seeing what's actually going on, reporting on it, and it's alarming, and it betrays and it confuses the mind about how any leader of a country thinks this is a good idea. Tell me what's happening in Ireland.
Oh, well, in a certain sense, this has been going on in Ireland for 30 years. I mean, we were pretty much everybody in Ireland was Irish up to 30 years ago. And then they started to open up the borders a bit, and nobody really objected. I mean, the European borders were opening up and there was other people coming in, but in a relatively manageable way for much of that time, although it got a little bit alarming at certain periods. But in the last 3 years or so, since the pandemic, the numbers, there's been an exponential uptick, and it's quite clear that what's going on is not in any sense organic immigration. It's got nothing to do with either supplying the needs of the current contemporary Irish economy, nor has it anything to do with what they keep insisting it is, that it's compassion on account of these people coming from war zones. Well, they're mostly men of fighting age. So I kind of asked, well, shouldn't we be sending guns out to the women and children if all the men are here who should be fighting at home, if there is a war zone there? And of course, it's all nonsense. And these people are, yes, they are military age men, as we keep repeating. But what is actually happening seems to have different dimensions to it. I mean, it's been passed off as this kind of sudden surge of compassion on behalf of our political class, who locked people in their homes here only 4 years ago and refused to allow them to go and see their dying grandparents and so on. But these guys are now trying to pass themselves off as humanitarians, and it doesn't really wash. Really, of course, you could get very dark about this because it has all the hallmarks of an invasion. It's very, you don't need to get too carried away to actually envisage that you could put uniforms on these guys one morning and put them out in the streets to police the native population, for example. But certainly, on its face, it seems to be we use terms like replacement. It's very interesting that the words that seem to fit best are immediately banned and deemed to be racist. So and that's the way of finding out what's really going on. Try describing it, and then if they try to ban you or lock you up, then you've hit it, right. So
Yeah, you're right.
yeah. So replacement is because like we had something like 250,000 people come into Ireland last year. Not official figures, but that seems to be what the general consensus of observers from abroad. Meanwhile, 100,000 of our own people applied for visas for Australia. Just Australia alone, not Canada and America or Britain or Europe or anything, just Australia alone, 100,000. So those 100,000 people who got to Australia, they would have met their people on the way in who were basically taking their places, getting houses in Ireland, which the native population can no longer get, many of them, getting jobs, getting money. If that's not replacement, I don't know what you call it. And yet, this word is banned, and successfully banned to a large degree from the mainstream of our conversation, which of course is now completely corrupted, has been particularly for the last 4 years. That this is the most surreal element of the whole thing, that you can't talk about the things that are most important. And that has spread, as it were, like a virus to the whole population, so that when you go to a gathering, I was recently at a wedding and I noticed this, that there were certain things going on. We had a referendum that very day, which was eventually beaten. The government's proposal was beaten 70-30, which was, nobody predicted it, including myself, nowhere near it. I thought we might shade it. I campaigned for a no vote. But the striking thing for me then, Lynn, was that around a big table the night before the wedding, the conversation was about all kinds of banalities, but nobody would dare mention the referendums or mention the migration issue or mention anything that was actually of importance to our lives and our futures and our children's futures. And this is the astonishing, I call it mutism. It's kind of like an imposed, muteness, that people are afraid to even appear in public thinking something unapproved, in case that thought might show on their faces in some way and they will be attacked, as you can be, as I was actually today, just walking down the street, by a guy on a bicycle, calling me names and abused me, and I couldn't get away from him. This is Ireland. This is the shocking thing, that this is Ireland, our beautiful country that was the most peaceful, apart from, we had the problem in the north and so on, but where I come from, the west of Ireland and the Republic, the southern part, was really the most peaceful, tranquil place in the world. Nobody got hot and bothered about anything. Everything was easygoing. We didn't have huge money. And that was probably one of the most disastrous things that's happened to Ireland, when we supposedly got rich from the 1919 onwards, and we got all these big pharma companies and big tech companies coming in, and they started to, first of all, they were supposed to give jobs to Irish people, which they hardly ever did. They mostly imported their workers. So that was another factor that caused a lot of the escalation in our population. We had a population back in, say, 97, which was about 3.5 million. And now it's nearly 5.5 million in just over 20 years. It's quite staggering, really. But the problem is you can't talk about this. The media, it's impossible to describe. I often say to people, that because we still go on as if nothing's really changed. It's just that there's certain weird things happening and absurd things happening, but it's the same. But it's not, because we don't have a conversation anymore. You can't trust what you hear. It's like having a car without mirrors. You're just driving in the blind. You haven't a clue what's behind you or what's coming either side of you, or even what's in front of you very often, And that's the thing that we never anticipated this, because we couldn't have imagined that one day that channel of enlightenment and information and discussion and conversation would be just turned off. And we would be left there having to take the feed from the government, whatever they wanted us to hear. That's what we are. Now they're bringing in hate speech legislation to shut us down completely. So we can't actually call out the destruction of our country by the people that we trusted with it.
Right. And what about J.K. Rowling? She was challenging hate speech in Scotland, and we're beginning to have that here in Canada. So once again, what's happening in Ireland, basically it's like a petri dish for what's happening. So Is it actually a law with hate speech, or is it this threat of coming in to Ireland?
Oh, it's a bill. It's a bill, and it's been going through the Parliament here in Ireland, the two houses, for the last year. And it ran into trouble in the upper house, where one particular politician, who was a lawyer, gave it some really a roasting on the floor of the Senate, and it was kind of withdrawn rather sheepishly for a while. But now, with this new regime, with Simple Simon Harris, that it's likely to be pushed ahead, they reckon. That's my sense anyway. Yes, and this is, of course, a generalized thing. You see, this is the remarkable thing, that these policies, you see, it's very important, and I think, to think about these, because we can talk about woke, we can talk about trans, we can talk about migration, and each one seems to be separate, but they're all really unified. There's a unity between them. And the most important thing that we need to say about them all the time is that none of them are organic. They didn't spontaneously erupt. They were orchestrated from above by hidden, unknowns who have an interest in the world and in changing it in particular ways. And that this is really what's going on, that we have to ask ourselves, well, what really is the hate speech laws? What are they for? They're not for the moment, because they don't care if black people get insulted by white people, or if gays get insulted by straights, or anything. These guys couldn't care less. But they need this thing to silence people for something else, for something that's imminent. And we can speculate about that, but certainly, we can look at educatedly at certain developments in the recent past, and things like, for example, if you go back to 2 years to the Ukraine war and the way that was orchestrated, then you have the Gaza business and all of that. But also the fact that we seem to be, and by all accounts and by all expert analysis of it, we're in the death throes, the death rattles of the financial system of the West, the currencies of the West, the dollar, the euro, the sterling, etc., that they're on the point of collapse, and that this will create a massive wave of chaos right across the West. And that the sense is, therefore, that what's going on under these various headings has to do with that the influx of migrants is precisely what I said earlier, a policing force, a police force, which would not have any sentimental attachment to the territory in which it is working, unlike, for example, the native police officers or our soldiers or whatever. And that these guys will be let loose when the moment comes that people realize that they're now being impoverished, completely impoverished, that their entire so-called wealth has been wiped out overnight. And that kind of thing. And that the other elements of the woke elements are really just part of distraction, really, to drive people demented, which is a very successful, project, you have to say, so that they will keep talking about these things in a kind of a puzzled way, and become so frazzled that they just say, oh, I don't want to think about it anymore, and become privatized in their thinking and in their outlooks on life. And they just say, look, I'm just going to, play golf and have a few drinks at the weekend, and I don't want to know about any of this other stuff. But that referendum situation that I was describing is very interesting for Ireland, because there is clear evidence in that the mutism is on the point of dissolving. Because it seemed to me that it was that day, 70-30, that it was as if, and I had this feeling myself in the polling station when I went there in the morning, that Friday morning, to vote, and I hadn't voted for some years, and I got my papers from the desk, and then I went over to the corner where there was, a high desk and a pencil tied with a string on it, and as in the old way, and I crouched over the desk and made my X, and 2 X's, and I just had this thought that this is actually a free place. This corner of this room is actually a vestige, perhaps one of the last vestiges of the Irish Republic, and that I am free here to speak my mind in a way that I can't any longer. Because, for example, I used to speak all over the country all the time when I was working with the Irish Times, and subsequently. I could be out every night of the week if I wanted to be, but I would certainly do 2 or 3 or 4 events every week. And for the last 4 years, I've only been able to, I think, speak twice with in events that were actually even mildly advertised. For the rest of them, I would have to meet my audience at a roundabout, And then we would all drive in convoy to a venue that hadn't been announced in advance. Because if it had been, the thing would have been attacked. The managers of the hotel would have been bombarded with abusive calls. There would have been hordes of mass thugs outside the venue when I arrived, and so on and so on. This is Ireland. This is, Ireland of the European values that our politicians talk about, Ireland of the democratic values that, Radker was so keen on telling us about. And he was the guy presiding over this. Make no mistake about this. This is not some ancillary, random, event that he's kind of, oh my goodness, what's that going on? We didn't know about that. No, not only did he know about it, he orchestrated it. This is the kind of people that we've allowed into the positions of authority in our country. And of course, they're not even figures of authority. They're not leaders in any sense. They're puppets of those exterior agents and agencies who have in mind for our countries, in Ireland, my country, your country, not very nice things, not very propitious things at
right.
all. And
we have a clip of Ivor Cummins, basically, he's questioning how Leo Varadkar became Prime Minister of Ireland, and I'd love to play it, and I think it ties in with what you're saying right now. Here we go.
Yes.
I didn't follow politics much. I was into World War II and history, but not modern politics. It was nonsense to me. But I always remember being surprised. How can a gay guy in his 30s suddenly appear out of nowhere and be the Prime Minister of the country?
Yeah.
It just seemed very odd. Well, we know now he's a young global leader. So a lot of phone calls were made, doors were opened. I'm sure doors were closed on other people. And there he was. But he has been an absolute treason against Ireland. He's silver spoon guy. His father, I believe, has massive property in India, big wealth. And he went and did medicine, never practiced, went straight into politics, rapidly into the WEF, and then he's Prime Minister. So go figure.
Right.
They're speculating why he left. I'm not sure. Maybe there's something embarrassing that's going to turn up. Or maybe the WEF have kind of said, you've done a great job with your treason and we've got new plans for you. And maybe he said, best to leave now before things get messy.
Mr. Waters, just like there, we sometimes feel like everyone's a puppet of the global leaders, and something's going on and we've been seized and we don't have much control over what's happening.
That's right. Definitely. I mean, the World Economic Forum is a very sinister organization. I remind people of something that isn't immediately noticeable, and I didn't really notice it for quite a few years. I was using that term, World Economic Forum, WEF. It didn't occur to me until one day I spotted that if you spell World WEF backwards, you get FEW, few. This is the organization of the few over the many. That's the purpose of this. C.S. Lewis used to talk about, the idea that man abolishes God and thinks that he's going to become God himself. But of course, Lewis pointed out that what happens is not that all men become gods, but a few men become gods. And this is what the World Economic Forum is. It's about making gods of a few men. And this is already in train in Ireland. Just if you to kind of see a history, you only in retrospect have I been able to see this, even though I lived through it. For example, there were two elections in 2011, a presidential election and a general election. And for some reason that I didn't really know in myself, I volunteered to cover those elections as a reporter, even though I hadn't done that for years. So I was, and now I realized looking back that year, that was the year that there was in effect what the Spanish call an auto golpe, a self-coup in Ireland. And the purpose of a self-coup is to ensure that the incumbent government is never removed thereafter, that it continues ad infinitum. And that's essentially what's happened. If you think what I was saying about Bradker there is so true. But there's more to it when you look at it. We had an election first of all, we had the fake prosperity of the Celtic Tiger from the mid-90s to about 2007. Then the economic collapse. And then we had the moment in 2010 when the troika of the EU Commission, the IMF and the World Bank came into Ireland and essentially accepted the economic surrender of our government. And we were basically pauperized as a nation because of the debt they had imposed on us, which our leaders were supposed to fight, and they refused to. But then that election happened, and there was all kinds of scenes around that where there was a huge, almost like incendiary mood in the country. But it was deflated by the fact that a movement which was started by journalists and affected or fainted at installing itself as an opposition, outside the political system. But then at the very last moment withdrew, leaving this mainstream party, Fine Gael, led by this guy who should never have been allowed to even clean the floor, hoover the carpets in the Taoiseach's office, was allowed into Kenny. He was allowed in. Now, he got an overall majority with another party that time. But then you look at what's happened in 13 years since then. There was an election in 2016. They were basically told, get lost, right? But he stayed on because the other big opposition party did a deal with them to vote for all their policies in the parliament, but not to be part of the government. It's called confidence and supply or some nonsense. And then the next year, Kenny left and Varadkar became his replacement as Taoiseach, as leader of the party, but also automatically as Taoiseach. So nobody voted for that. Nobody even, not one member of the public had any say in it. And then he went on to 2020. And in the February of 2020, there was another election and he was booted out. He was told, get lost. We don't want, you're useless. But he stayed as a caretaker government after the pandemic was announced by him, funnily enough. And he went on then for 4 months in the most appalling period in government in all of our history. The overriding of the constitution, the introduction of unbelievably draconian laws, all of this stuff without any consultation, with the media completely bought off and closed down. And then eventually they did a deal with that other party, Fianna Fáil, to allow them in for 2 years to make coalition, so they could alternate as Taoiseach, Prime Minister, and share government. An arrangement that had been ruled out for 80 years between both parties. Both parties said that they would rather, eat their heads than go into coalition with another, and then they did. So now we're up to, the present, and we're at a situation now where Varadkar, a Taoiseach Prime Minister, who in his own constituency last time out got elected on the 5th count. In the past, Lynn, the Taoiseach would get about 3 quotas in any election. He got elected on the 5th count, and he is about to hand over to a guy who got elected in his constituency on the 15th count. So the reality of it is now, Lynn, that actually I have as much of a mandate to lead Ireland and lead the government of Ireland as any of these creeps. Mm-hmm. And yet we're going to have to put up with this guy for another, God knows, at least, well, there's supposed to be an election this year or next year, but I'm sure they have plans, and I'm sure their friends over in Davos have ways and means whereby they can avoid election. We've already heard, by the way, a rumor that Uncle Klaus has said that he doesn't want to have an election in Ireland this year, that he would prefer to finish the immigration project first.
It's so scary. And we've heard, I've had all kinds of friends say, well, do you really think that there'll be another election? It does seem like this sounding, this soundbite about elections maybe never happening again. And of course, we see the upheaval. Joe Biden can't find his way off a stage, but somehow we're to believe that they actually think this is the only candidate they have. They didn't even choose someone with better hair like Gavin Newsom and put him in so we could at least look at a cute guy, right? No, I mean, dumb as nails, but still he would destroy the country. But they've got Biden, and it's mind-boggling.
It's like one of those movies we used to see back in the, 10 or 15 years ago about these weird situations, in the world. And, as I say, being there, whatever, I can't think of the other ones, but, there'd be strange kind of scenarios that were so fanciful that only sitting in the cinema could you enter into could you manage the suspension of disbelief that was necessary to be entertained by them. But they were entertaining. But now we're living in one of these where there's a completely senile gaga leader of the free world, which isn't any longer free. And it's actually, so there's no scriptwriter Well, actually, I actually wonder if actually that the people who are actually doing this are actually the Hollywood scriptwriters who have been drafted in to create a future on paper and then to make it happen in reality. Because this is the incredible level of things now that our words have run out of road. You know, that words like crazy, bonkers, bananas, deranged, unhinged, they're no good. They're just scratching the surface of the what's really happening. And we're every day we're waiting to see what else will happen we're trying to remember where we came from, to remember the stability and this relatively civil and civilized nature of our cultures and our countries. And we're thinking, this is a dream, this is a nightmare. And I'll wake up, but I don't. It's unbelievable. And in a certain sense, I say that, and I feel the futility of saying it, because there's nowhere to go.
What you're describing is, are we losing his feed? Oh, there you are. You're back. Sorry, you kind of froze there for a minute with the internet, but I totally resonate with what you're saying. And is he going to have to come back in? I resonate with what John Waters is saying, because this is actually terrifying. It's like we can't wake up out of a very bad nightmare, and everyone has a role, it seems, and we're not included in the script. We're left there going, what's my line? Because nothing makes sense.
That's right. That's right. And you see, there was that thing in politics before in our lives where, that kind of thing where there's a political scandal erupts and we started watching this drama, and it's authentic. And we're watching the guy at the middle who's in trouble. Maybe it's a sex scandal, maybe it's a financial scandal or whatever. And there's a kind of a certain dynamic where you're almost like watching a drama, but it's real. But you then kind of enter into it and you sort of begin to understand, I can predict what's going to happen more or less by the series of events as they play out. And that, Alistair Campbell, the Tony Blair's PR guy or press guy years ago, used to have this rule that if a politician who was in trouble in the media couldn't get himself off the front pages within a week, then he was toast, right? And that kind of syndrome, you could rely upon it in some way. Now you can't. There's no necessary connection between the gravity of charges or stories or news or events. Like, they manage news in such a way that it is actually damped down before it even starts smoldering, Like it's like you don't even know. They tell you what's happening. You kind of technically know, but the meaning of it is withheld. And so we can't any longer trust our instincts based on our past lives and past interaction with media and so on, to be able to understand how these things will play out, because nothing ultimately seems to have any consequences for the powerful anymore.
I know. And I wanna ask you, like, do you think, you were saying, you talk about mutism, and then maybe, do you see signs that we're going to get to a level where we won't be mute anymore because we just can't, because it's so bad? Is this the awakening? Do you see any signs of that?
I have long felt that had to happen, Lynn, because, the consequences of what's happening are so unbelievable and so unthinkable. I mean, we in the West, all of us stand not alone. I mean, we may well lose our lives, but we certainly stand to lose our homes, our homelands, our metaphysical home, the place that we feel safe in, that we did feel safe in, that we arrive back. You see, Dublin Airport underneath the plane as you land, and you feel, I'm home, I'm safe. And that is being taken from us and taken from our children. And so I think people are beginning now to have an intuition about this. And you can see it in Ireland as an escalating awakening, those referendum results, the numbers of people turning out. The big thing that I've discovered that was missing because of these conditions I'm describing in the media was what I would call connectivity. That each person in their own heart was aware. We thought that people were asleep. We thought that people were dumb. But each person is what they were afraid. And each person in their heart knew this, felt this, but couldn't speak it because they didn't trust the channels. They weren't sure what reaction they might get, particularly when the way this was all bedded down with the COVID thing and the vaccine thing. That you were afraid of hurting people's feelings. You were afraid of being told you're a conspiracy theorist or whatever. Now you're afraid of being a racist over here. You're afraid of being a homophobe over there. But now people are saying, really, I don't think it really matters what they call me, because what they're doing is so bad that I'm going to have to stop it, even if I do get called all those terrible things. And the funny thing is, when people go out there and get called them, as I did, after a short time, it doesn't really bother you anymore. You just say, come on, what else you got?
I agree. And I love everything that you're saying. You're my long lost uncle, I think. We're in the family of community thought, and everything you're saying I agree with. And it's so alarming, and yet it's very good that we can talk about it. But we've got a very big problem. They're doing this to us. And I mean, I feel the weight of it right in this very moment so intensely, like something very bad is happening, and we're all trying to figure out what it is. And we think we're getting closer, but some bad stuff, even watching this bridge that went down in the United States. I mean, I've just reassessed that so many times, like the damage that has done for 4 to 5 years to literally break this avian flu threat. They're attacking farmers all the time, which makes no sense if you're a human being. Farmers should be elevated. The need for water and clean air like that, these are good things that we need. And yet they're doing things to destroy. And we've got all kinds of crazy stuff going on. They're flying particles over our airwaves in Canada, and they're admitting to it now. But before, if you were saying, you've got stuff in our skies, then they'd say you were a conspiracy theorist, and that's another way to silence you. But now we're just getting so alarmed that we're speaking. And I came out speaking a while ago, as did you. So my question to you, thank you for your time. You've been so generous with it. This is amazing. But my question to you is, knowing what you know, what is the best course for mankind? What should we all be doing?
Well, what confronts us really, Lynn, is the four horsemen. It's pandemic, famine, war, and despotism. That's what faces the world, the West. This is something we can't comprehend, really, that, all our lives we lived in what we thought were free societies. We didn't understand that they were contingently free. They were free by concession of the elites who controlled everything, controlled our political systems, our banking systems, our financial systems, our technological systems. And now, and what we have come to realize is that all of the structures that we thought were, almost like the hardwiring or the hardware of our democracies, which is like civil liberty organizations and press and so on, and rock and roll musicians and poets and novelists and all of these people, that they all went away as soon as the first, even before a shot was fired, they were gone, and in 2020, and that it's as if now all of that was fiction. That all of those profound beliefs in liberty, all that talk about, liberalism, which is liberty and freedom and truth and justice and decency, that this is now all in the skip, waiting to be taken away. And now we're moving into what Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, the world's greatest criminal organization, hedge fund management, I think they call it. They are, he's announcing us that we're about to enter the new age of totalitarianism. He's quite open about it. He says that, democracy is no longer a good fit for the kind of capitalism we plan to have, and totalitarianism is better. And of course, this doesn't get reported in our newspapers. So the public, I see my neighbours going up the streets in the morning with the Irish Times under their arm, confident that they're going to have a good read of what happened yesterday. No, they're not. They're going to have a good read of lies concocted by a bunch of basically journaliers, I call them, who work for that newspaper now.
Wow. They put the script out every day. I absolutely just have enjoyed every single moment of the words you have spoken. I hope that we could do this again, sir. You have to stay up kind of, past 9 o'clock, and I know that's early for you and all, but it just seems a terrible time to have to do, a broadcast. But your words are so profound, and your wisdom is so succinct. So I hope that we can do it again.
Thank you. Of course, don't worry about my bedtime. I mean, you did say I was your uncle, not your granddad. So, there's...
Okay. I know. It's not so bad, just after 9. I appreciate you. You're telling the truth. Please keep writing and telling the world what we need to know as it comes to you. I believe in a very divine way. I've just resonated. I think it's very serious right now, and we need to have good voices. Yes. Thank you, sir. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, a couple of the things that this epic gentleman, isn't he phenomenal? I mean, I could have just asked, a couple questions really, and he could just talk, and you get a sense that he could literally talk for hours about what he knows and what he's sensing. And he was just so honest about, what we're seeing with this mutism and the growing amount of people that want to speak and are maybe no longer willing to stay silent. I think that's a positive thing. He also spoke about the economy, and we have a very special treat with us today because silver is doing some really good things and gold has gone up. And we want to bring on Steve Merrill to talk about a couple things that he's been highlighting as he deals in gold and silver, and we tell you about him all the time. And he understands what's happening. And as of today, something very interesting is happening. So, Steve, welcome to the show. Thanks for waiting in the background there. How are you?
I'm really good, Laura-Lynn. How are you?
Good, good. I've just had a really, it was an incredible conversation, but it left us really understanding that there's things at play, and you understand that very well because with the economy that they've been suppressing certain things, because if they let gold and silver really go, it's going to cost the banks an awful lot. You understand all of that. So you sent me an article. Tell me what's going on right now.
Well, thanks, Laura-Lynn. And just before I get started, welcome to everybody that's listening. I've met so many of your listeners, and I think I told you this morning, I think we've had 460 some orders come through your channel, which is so exciting. And for the most part, I think everybody that's ordered is paid less than they would be paying today. So everybody's, somewhat in the money, although there's a lot of upside left. And everybody's excited about silver over the last 3 days, especially. We've had about I think in Canadian dollars, about $3.50 added to the spot price, which in percent are 12.5%, which is really out of the ordinary for silver or gold. Usually when there's any excitement at all, there's no follow through. So you get a big day on a Tuesday and the price might be up 2 or 2.5%. And then that's it. The next day, the cartel, we call them, come in and smother the excitement with a wet rag, the futures market to do it, and dampen all excitement, and everybody kind of goes back to sleep, which has been happening really for most of our life, really since you could say 1980, a good 4.5 decades, but. Recently, those paying attention have noticed and have identified that there's about a $3 gap in the silver futures price in China compared to the silver futures price in New York. So when you get this kind of disparity between trading platforms, you've got smart people, obviously, who'll take advantage of that and arbitrage that. So theoretically, I could buy a contract in New York, a May delivery contract, in 26.50 maybe yesterday, and immediately put a sell order in Shanghai if I'm able and connected to both exchange at 29.50. Well, that's pretty easy money on a 5,000 ounce contract for for a banker or a speculator or a hedge fund or whoever's savvy enough to do that. And it could be what we're seeing here in the last few days, arbitrage opportunity and a more new Asia, massive consumption. This tweet came from Peter Spina, who's the owner and proprietor. He lives in Czechoslovakia, who commented on his X channel, and I follow him, about the number of ounces traded on paper. Again, these aren't physical ounces moving back and forth. This was on Tuesday, I believe. Today's Thursday. 150 million ounces of silver trading hands in a global annual supply market of about 850 million ounces. So all the mined silver across the world annually in an entire year is well less than 1 billion ounces. And on Tuesday, I think it was, you had massive volume. So the biggest volume day that we've seen in, I think he said 3 years, since maybe the COVID nonsense broke out. 17 billion in liquidity. This is a sign, I personally believe, I haven't read this really anywhere, that this narrowing of this arbitrage opportunity between the New York and the Shanghai markets is maybe closing up to what should be, what is reality in China, with close to $80 US gold, whip silver price. But this demand is coming. It's hard to say from whom. I mean, you know, I've commented before on how large is the short position. There's another fellow we follow. His name is Bix Weir. A couple of days ago, reminded us all that the short position in the COMEX silver platform in New York is 219 million, a third of global mine supply. There's no other commodity with a third of its annual mine supply sold short. In these cases, 4 banks hold 219 million ounces short, apparently, as of Tuesday. And for every dollar tick that the silver price moves up, that's a $220 million loss on the books for these 4 banks. So you get a $3 or $4 move up with a few days, times that by 219 million ounces sold short by just this hand. And that's $1 billion loss quite quickly. And this pain that we, couldn't be inflicted upon a bigger band of thieves, fortunately, is going to get worse. A lot of people believe as we push towards $30 US. Well, that's another $1 billion in losses on the books. At some point, these banks, and this is what we've long hypothecated or forecasted, these banks will have to cover their butts and actually buy silver contracts to limit the losses, to stem the tide, to cauterize the bleeding, if you will. And that in itself could send prices even higher, causing even more pain for those that haven't closed their short positions, and create what's called a short squeeze. And I've been telling everybody I can reach lately to watch this movie. I think it's on Prime. We watched it a little while ago. It's called Dumb Money. And it's all about the GameStop squeeze back in 2021, 2022, where the young guy in his basement was recommending to buy GameStop, the stock, after he recognized how short some of these hedge funds were in New York. And it's a terrific movie. It's well acted. Seth Rogen plays the chairman of a hedge fund called Melvin Capital, which on this one trade alone lost $6.8 billion and bankrupted the whole company. And it's an analogy for what happens when these banks get cocky, really cocky in this case, and think they're God, and start pushing the market around. And it ended really badly for them, and it ended badly for 2 larger partners, one of them Citadel, one of the largest hedge funds in the world. My suggestion to watch the movie is that the same mentality, if it ever, amongst the public, if it ever starts to permeate silver, and I believe it will create a scenario like we had with GameStop. There was a stock I went dollars, about $3,000. I don't even remember the numbers it was saying. There was one day I think it was up 580%. It was a crazy short squeeze. and the public held the line, you might say, and forced these banks to cover their positions to limit their losses. Even at that, the losses were so magnificent that Melvin Capital is history today. And without some fancy footwork by a couple of their larger partners, Citadel might have been might be gone today too, as a result of this one cocky, arrogant trading melody, you might say, or position in this one stock. And it got the kid that was blogging from his basement. It was a Twitter handle, a true story, obviously. Put all his life savings into it at $58,000 with his wife. His wife trusted him, and exited the position 2 years later at $30 million. He held. He never sold. He had family. He was up $2, $3, $4, $5 million on the position, showing his app to his family. He's up, I think it was $10 million at one point. He's sitting around the coffee or the dinner table, and family's urging him to sell. He said, nope, not selling, holding. He knew what was going on. He studied the market. He knew what was going on. He knew that collectively him and his followers had the upper hand, and none of them sold. And they all made out like bandits by holding the line. Now, it was a roundabout way, but dumb money if you get a chance. And it's a real good, like I say, a real good analogy for what I think is likely going to happen as we burn these shorts, as the public and the commercial traders come in, and the commercial users have to have silver. And that's what that article I sent you today from Kitco News, that's another historic statement. Canadian analyst, the commodity analyst for TD Bank, talking about the supply-demand fundamentals in silver that have really shocked everybody. Some of your listeners might remember me talking about this back in October when we were out in Whitby there, about how in 2022 we had the largest demand year ever among industrial users for silver, 1.25 billion ounces, I think it was, and the largest deficit ever between that demand and global total mine supply, annual mine supply, which is about 800 million ounces. So the deficit between the two was 400 million ounces. And in 2022, I think there was a loan that went into solar panels alone, and that's mainly Chinese production of solar panels. I think they produce 99% of solar panels. Well, that number is screaming higher. This article here reminds us all that the demand coming just from solar panels and from batteries, these two items that don't work without silver, is 500,000 ounces, which is 2/3 of all annual. And another friend who we're almost daily, he thinks they're off. He thinks on April 17th, silver price, the CPM group, I think it is, he thinks they're coming out and about to announce that the actual demand among solar panel producers is double what it is. And he suggested 650 million ounces of silver demand. Well, this is a number that just can't happen without a big reconciliation in higher prices, much higher prices. And a lot of those prices, unfortunately, are going to flow down to all the electronic industries, all the electronic gadgets, and all the toasters and TVs and cell phones and keyboards. As a lot of your listeners know, silver is the second most widely used commodity on Earth, behind oil. And life doesn't work without it. Western lifestyle next done without silver. And I say air and water because behind air and water, I think number 3 is in our Western way of life. It feeds our Western lifestyle. This is another article here. If you flip back to that first one, I don't know if you can do that, Laura, but a couple of paragraphs near the bottom. This one, I think, near the bottom. Third, fourth paragraph from the bottom. There for many years, market green transition. Galley said in demand driven by the green transition has completely transformed the market. He noted in 2019 their expectation is to take 165 years to deplete the stockpile of silver. I really don't know where he'd come up with that number or who came up with that number. But this TD senior market commodity analyst says the new 2-year target could be accelerated if investors jump back into the market. Potentially ETF buying activity associated with typical fund fetting could dramatically shorten this time span. At some point, he says 2 years, pressure release valves could eventually help the missing silver make up its way to the markets, but necessitate higher price in order to this. An extreme upside convexity trade. Don't know what that means. It's severely underpriced. But I thought he said 2 years. Just scroll up.
Yeah,
Laura-Lynn, just scroll up.
Yeah, there was a 2 year somewhere.
2-year target.
Yeah. Well, I know at the very top. Okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, people can read it for themselves. It's on
Yes.
Kitco. I think it was posted the day before. There's another couple of good articles, like the one you got up there, Hecla Mining, which is one of the largest silver miners in the world, suggesting that $100 is a laydown. In my opinion, we should be there, and anybody who studies this market believes we should be there today.
So why aren't we? Because I know you talk about artificially holding the price back because it's not good for the banks, I guess.
Silver is competition to fiat money, to dollar-based money, bonds, treasuries, other ETFs like the SPY, such. So holding the silver price is in the interest of the bankers, and they've been doing it, and they don't. It's open secret. They even announced it back in the 30s that they were going to intervene in currency markets, including gold, and they know that gold is true money, silver is true money, gold. And that if the excitement builds and people start exiting like they did in the 70s, their dollar deposits for gold, and it create lineups at little shops like mine and other gold stores in China, that it's really game over. And it was happening in the 70s. Some people who are still alive, a lot of your listeners I know are on into their 60s and 70s, and some remember the 70s well, when interest rates were 20%, inflation was 15, 16, 17%, and everybody was buying gold after the next one, and gold prices went to $850 in 1980, a 2,500% move in the 70s. Silver moved up to $5,250 in 1980, a 15-to-1 ratio against gold, which is its normal historical ratio. And ever since then, we've had a nonstop intervention, a suppression of the free market. And we've had a bubble, and suppressing the gold price has enabled the bubble in real estate, and the bubble in stocks, and the bubble in the dollar. Really, it's the biggest bubble of all time. Without suppressing the gold price, we never got away with this, because interest rates would have never been kept down like this.
Wow.
So,
well,
since 1980, we've had almost a tripling of the gold price. That was its previous all-time high. So $850 to what we are now at $2,300 US spot is almost 3 times, yet silver still lags half of its 1980 high, despite overwhelming demand, like we're talking about here, electronics and so on, and shrinking supply. So these banks, names wise not to maybe say them publicly, but they're names everybody knows, and they're offside in these positions. They're cocky. They think this can last forever. Maybe the higher levels, they know it can't. But when they start to cover, it could send silver much higher and very quickly.
Wow.
And everybody that's in this space is advised to really just hang onto their hats and from the sidelines, just keep the popcorn ready, because it's going to be a fun one.
Well, I appreciate that. I keep wondering how we can keep going, because fiat money, us in Canada, we're servicing the debt for Canadians at $46 billion this year. So that's just the interest rate that we're servicing. Next year, it's going to be $52 billion. So it's so much money just to service debt, and we just keep going, you know? So I know that you've probably got, you're at your place. I appreciate you dropping in. So bottom line is you recommend gold and silver still.
Oh, there's no question. You know, I've said this before. Gold and silver have been money throughout human history. They've never failed to be money. They're convertible into whatever fiat currency is flavor in the week in whatever country you might be in, whether it's Moscow, Mumbai, Montreal, or whatever city you might be in, I should say. And and the fiat money system that we know now is really breathing this last legs. And you're exactly right. The ability for these governments to service these debts is next to impossible. It's all the tax they can collect and then some just to pay the interest on the debt. This is not going to end well for them, or unfortunately for anybody in dollar deposits, and that includes dollar denominated assets, your treasuries and your equities, all your stock, even your mining stocks. This could all seize up really quickly, and you know, those on the sidelines holding real money outside the banking system are potentially going to be the recipients of the biggest transfer of wealth of all time. And I say, just hang on. You know, $4 in the last few days. Let's sell some silver. This is just the worst time to sell some silver. If anything,
right,
buy more at half the price that it was in 1980, and share it with your family and your friends, and share the wealth, if you will, down the road, because this could be it. This could be the explosion that we've been waiting many decades for, to be honest. And
wow,
if it is, it's going to be it'll be on the front page soon enough, and that'll be the day when most of the dealers are probably sold out. I've seen it before. We've had every dealer in North America on 3 different occasions unable to deliver a silver ounce on that same day. We've had many occasions where every dealer in North America is completely sold out, and you're waiting anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 weeks for the refiners to catch up and resupply these dealers. And you don't want to be in that lineup. You really don't, in my opinion. Be ahead of the curve. A lot of your listeners are, and stay there as long as you can.
Man, thank you for showing up, Steve. We'll let you go. You're a busy man. I appreciate it. Thanks for your advice. Yeah.
Laura-Lynn.
Really great. Thank you, Steve.
Wonderful day to everybody. Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And, you know, Steve's right. Many of you do know him because we've been talking about Sun City Silver. And if we could just put that up maybe right now, he makes a lot of sense with what he's doing. And we feel really good about telling you to do this because this something's wrong when, okay, so the U.S. is adding $1 trillion of debt every 100 days. I think that we must be adding a lot more debt every 100 days as well here with Trudeau. So we always say, don't just leave your money, dollars that are printed on paper, sitting in the bank. Better to invest. Never been a better time to invest in silver. It's still at such a reasonable, like 26, 27. So it's gone up a couple of dollars. You saw that article there that, excuse me, I was trying to think we had it here, that, you know, they're predicting maybe it could get up to, you know, that $100 per ounce. So lots, there it was, JT, solar demand, because, you know, they're doing all of these things that they need silver's in everything. So don't leave your money just sitting around, burning a hole in your bank's pocket. Perhaps think about investing. You can get a hold of Steve today, sovereignize@protonmail.com, and he will write you back. And I know in the States, they have a really easy turnover from retirement investments into gold and silver, but I don't make sure you don't give them silver certificates. Yeah. Yeah. We recommend, and I talked to Steve about silver, he recommends physical silver. Get it in your hands, not where somebody else is storing it or housing it or anything for you. Anyways, that's just the way that we do it. And it's good to have that in your hands because it's solid, it has value, it's not fake, like the fake money, the monopoly money that we're playing with right now here in Canada. Okay, couple quick things. ABC News story on a mammal to human bird flu case reported in Texas.
The concern over bird flu right here in the U.S. Tonight, the CDC tracking an outbreak, including a confirmed, very rare human case involving a worker believed to have contracted bird flu from an infected cow. And tonight, the country's largest egg supplier now forced to destroy nearly 2 million birds. ABC's Maria Villarreal from Texas.
Tonight, the CDC is closely tracking bird flu across the country after a confirmed case in a Texas dairy farm worker. 11 dairy farms across 4 states have detected bird flu in cows. Officials believe the Texas man was infected after coming in contact with a cow. It's believed to be the first global case of transmission from mammal to human.
What folks should know is we've never seen a transmission of human to human of avian flu, but we're watching closely. As we've learned from COVID, viruses change, and we want to make sure we're staying ahead of it.
It comes as the country's largest supplier of eggs was forced to destroy nearly 2 million birds after the virus was detected in chickens. Cal-Maine Foods, behind major brands like Farmhouse Eggs, Eggland's Best, and Land O'Lakes, halting production at its Texas plant. The CDC says the risk to the public is low. Bird flu doesn't spread through cooked meats or eggs or pasteurized milk. And David, this case of human bird flu coming from a cow, it's believed to be the first of its kind, so health officials are watching it very closely. Experts are also watching how this could potentially impact our wallets, but right now they do not believe it will have a major impact on the price of eggs.
Okay, well, I saw somebody who sells eggs in the area, so I thought I'm going to start getting my eggs from them. But, this lady says, well, what we learned from COVID. What did we learn from COVID? We learned about something I had never heard of, gain of function, right?
It's on YouTube.
Yes, we're on YouTube. Gain of function, that was interesting. So we've got a couple of interesting clips that I want to show you. Of course, let's first, find out the WHO's Dr. Tedros. We always love to have him weigh in because he's so knowledgeable and he's done such a good job so far. So he says they are monitoring the bird flu, spoiler, from mammals to humans. Take a look.
Over the past few weeks, there have been several reports of mammals, including minks, otters, foxes, and sea lions, having been infected with H5N1 avian influenza. H5N1 has spread widely in wild birds and poultry for 25 years, but the recent spillover to mammals needs to be monitored closely. For the moment, WHO assesses the risk to humans as low. Since H5N1 first emerged in 1996, we have only seen rare and non-sustained transmission of H5N1 to and between humans. But we cannot assume that will remain the case, and we must prepare for any change in the status quo.
Well, okay, couple things. First of all, they're trying to scare us. Second of all, they're trying to kill us, okay? So we have to get ahead of the game because we know, we have to, well, it hasn't happened before, but it could. What happened with gain of function is that you keep doing things in a lab that could jeopardize humanity. And we know they do that. So take a look at this. Former CDC Director Dr. Robert Redfield says the gain of function has defeated the human and animals species barrier, and the next pandemic will be more brutal.
The reality is the U.S. government funded this work. NIH funded it, USAID funded it, the State Department funded it, and the DOD funded it. So the United States funded the research, and the scientific community, largely in America and Europe, fostered the gain of function research, which was the basis for which this virus came. Tony's right that prior to gain of function research, the only way new pathogens came in to the human species was spillover. But now, in the presence of gain-of-function research, where you can take a pathogen into a laboratory and change it, then no longer does the species barrier really define the event in humans. It can actually come. And I do believe the next pandemic, and we're going to have another pandemic, and I think it's going to be the great pandemic. I consider COVID a minor pandemic. The great pandemic is going to come, and normally it would come from spillover. It's going to be bird flu that learns how to transmit to humans and then go human to human. But I think the species barriers are very real, but it's much more probable that it will happen because of gain-of-function research in a laboratory and then escape, and then we're going to have a pandemic with flu, which will be much more brutal to the world than COVID was.
So I have an idea. Let's stop all gain of function. Let's stop scaring people. Let's stop doing things in labs that you shouldn't be doing. And I hope Tony, your buddy Tony, Anthony Fauci, will get his just rewards for what he's done and the harm that he's already caused to humanity. It looks like, you know how we were talking with our guest today, Mr. Waters? It looks like there's things that they're planning and scheming and agendas that they have that we don't fully understand. And sometimes we're just baffled by how our leaders, those that are in power, are behaving. And maybe what they're doing behind the scenes that we don't know about. So remember how they predicted, how Anthony Fauci predicted that, there will be a sudden surprise, viral attack before Donald Trump even got into office. He said in the next presidency, there will be. They're so prophetic, aren't they? They should become soothsayers and make lots of money telling people's, futures. But in actuality, they're creating it. They're not prophetic. They're schemers, connivers, planners, and they're doing it behind the scenes. So I think that this is what they have planned, is they want it to be where, they want it to be really bad, and they want it to take out billions of people because the depopulators, we played this guy yesterday, I think, didn't we, JT? But this depopulator, Dennis Meadows, basically, he's totally open about it. Yeah, we've got 7 billion people. We've got to bring that down to 1 billion. And that's what's got to happen, he says, at the end of that clip. So we don't need to be afraid. We need to take Psalms 91 and declare that over our families and our loved ones, that the plague might come nigh their home. And I do pray that the depopulators experience the prophetic words of their own mouths, and that the depopulation comes to their own family, because they're declaring it, they're involved in it, they're doing it, they have an agenda to end life. And Elon Musk was recently talking about that, and Elon Musk is like, we need more people. We need people to have babies. We need people to populate. We need more people for good sustenance of everything that we have, right? I like him. I like that, Elon. So don't be afraid. Don't be discouraged, and protect your family with Psalms 91. U.S. Representative Klein questions FDA why we are still collaborating with Chinese science entities.
I was pretty shocked to learn about this recent $1 million collaboration on risky bird flu evolution lab experiments with the CAS and a researcher affiliated with the Wuhan lab, which is an arm of the academy. Beyond the obvious, this is extremely concerning because the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the Bipartisan China Committee acknowledged that the CAS is a state-controlled entity that reports to China's State Council. The U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission reports that the Chinese Academy of Sciences has connections to Chinese military, nuclear, and cyber espionage programs. With growing concerns from the Office of DNI and others about China's bioweapons capabilities, the national security threats raised by the USDA's collaboration with the CCP-controlled Chinese Academy of Sciences on dangerous bird flu experiments aren't hypothetical. The Wuhan-tied Chinese Academy of Sciences researcher on this USDA project has stated that one of the goals of this bird flu research collaboration is to, quote, exchange the research data. Is the USDA sharing data and virus sequencing from bird flu evolution experiments conducted in high containment USDA labs with collaborators at the CAS? And if so, how can the USDA ensure sensitive data on lab-created bird flu strains is not used for malign purposes by the CCP, for example, for bioweapons development?
To my knowledge, there's not the sharing that you've suggested, and that all of this is basically walled off. So everything we're doing stays with us. It doesn't necessarily go to the UK or to China.
Do you have confidence in these walls that you
Yes.
are speaking to?
Yes.
All right. The Wuhan Institute of Virology had walls, and it was
Well,
identified
we're not in China, sir. We're just a different
as an
deal.
affiliate of the Chinese Academy of Sciences and the U.S. government's 10-year debarment levied against the Wuhan lab. The Foreign Affairs Committee has proposed sanctions against the CAS due to the Wuhan lab's gain-of-function research, violation of NIH grant terms, and subsequent cover-up. Why is the USDA still collaborating with the CAS on risky virus research when it has violated U.S. grant and gain-of-function policies, obstructed COVID origin investigations, and refused to share critical data on U.S.-funded coronavirus research at its lab in Wuhan?
It's really not a collaboration per se, because everyone is doing their own separate research. Obviously, it's in the best interest of all of us that we figure this HPAI out so that we don't continue to see the devastation that has occurred in this country. We've spent close to $1 billion of CCC resources trying to help our turkey, chicken, and egg layers industry survive this. So we got to find we have to figure out how to solve it and how to stop it. We have to figure out how to vaccinate. We have to figure out all of the very complicated process involving vaccination.
I would agree.
Turkeys love it, chickens don't. I mean, there are just a lot of challenges.
Growers and processors in my district, but we shouldn't
We're
compromise
not-
our national security when
This
we
is,
are.
our national security is not being compromised at all with reference to this particular circumstance.
Well, will you commit to terminating the involvement of the CAS and
There's
other
nothing-
state
there's
controlled
nothing to
entities in
terminate.
this and other USDA
There's
research?
nothing to terminate.
Well, I think you shouldn't be. These walls you claim to have created, I would highly doubt are.
Well, you're doing a disservice to the professionals and scientists who work for USDA when you say that, sir.
You're doing a disservice to our national security and
No,
to our country.
not even close.
Mr. Secretary,
Not even
I yield
close.
back.
Not even close.
Oh, that guy said it out loud to this fellow. Did you see how testy he gets, when he starts being put to the wall? Well, will you commit that we won't have, that we'll have, good safeguards and that we won't have a problem here? Oh, no, there is no problem. There is no problem, right? What happened at that Winnipeg lab? Does anyone really know? Remember when the couple of people were ousted and it was kind of a big to-do for 2 days in our Canadian media? Do you know what the United States does so much better than us? They hold these kinds of hearings where they do investigation, where they subpoena people to come in and to get the truth on, what is going on with certain things. And, I don't hear of this kind of thing happening in Canada. Am I wrong, JT? But they just go to the House of Commons and yell.
But the Liberals control the meetings because they have the majority party, so their people are usually the chair people.
Okay, so he's saying it happens, but the Liberals control the meetings, and what, we don't hear of it. Like I'd like to see all these people, like in the United States, right? They've got Bobolinsky coming in to say what the Biden crime family has been doing. They have Hunter Biden compelled to come in. Sometimes the president has to speak. Like here in Canada, all kinds of nonsense is happening, and we don't get to the bottom of it. We don't know how, freedom of information, well, like good luck with that on lots of stuff. And this, meanwhile, is just so important for the protection of mankind and life. Now, of course, we know what Revelations has to say. When you look at Revelation 6, it talks about these seals that get opened. And, one of the seals that's going to get opened is when the rider gives power to take peace from the earth and to kill each other. And to this rider, they'll be given a large sword. I mean, things are happening. But let's remember that the Lord said that he would give us information so that we would not be unaware. And it's in getting information, and that's why with good knowledge, the people will not perish. You'll know how to protect yourselves. And that's what we're here doing every single day. Startling footage out of Taiwan as cars quickly back up. And I know you guys have probably all seen this because it's gone so viral on YouTube, but check out what happens when this boulder just... Oh my goodness, watch this. That guy. I hope everyone's okay in that vehicle. Yeah, this is like a bad movie, right? It's like Raiders of the Lost Ark and you're going down the tunnel and the rocks are coming. And it's so interesting, like of all the places that that car could have gone, it literally backs into the place where that huge boulder comes, but only with its rear, I think it's rear end, right? So, oh, I hope everyone's all right. I don't know, so many different things happening. You know, I spoke earlier today about that bridge in the States. It's still baffling when you watch that. It's still like they need to do a thorough investigation on how that happened, that has taken out such an important bridge, a bridge that literally cripples many parts of the travel and the, you know, the production that goes on in the United States of America. That bridge, that was important. And, you know, we watched it over and over, and how, you know, the lights would come on, the lights would go off of the vessel, and the ship is heading closer and closer, and it just turns right into the exact spot that would do such damage. Like, it didn't seem like an accident. So who was in control of that? I have yet to hear that the ship's captain, or, you know, like, what is the fallout? I hope there's a huge investigation into all of this. People are really crying foul on all of it. My website is Laura-Lynn.tv. Thank you very much for watching us. If you could contribute to us $20 a month or more, I'd love to send you my book. The book's titled Relentless Redemption, and it is my story from failure to God's amazing grace and how powerful he is, how great he is. And I'd love to send that to you, get that into your hands. Many of you send us, you know, a one-time gift, or you send us once a month. We appreciate it so much. Just push that little button, go to the website, Laura-Lynn.tv, press the button, and it will take you in. And I think that we also have PayPal available now, if that's a better avenue for you. I don't know that we have the button up for PayPal yet, but if that works for you, maybe just send me an email at lauralynnlive@protonmail.com, or PM, right? lauralynnlive@pm.me. You don't have to type as many words. You can also send e-transfers that way. You can donate anonymously on the website at the donate button. So, you know, if you'd like to keep it quiet, that's fine. Thank you. I cannot stress enough how much it means to us that you'll take a moment to bless us, to help us to do what we do, because without you, it just wouldn't be possible. It just wouldn't. Like, we'd have to, you know, start, I don't know, go into the rock quarry and dig out rocks. I don't know. But since the Lord has called us to this, there's no real other way to do it but then to just trust that God is going to send good people who understand the vision. This is much more than a career. This is not us just sitting here, you know, building our own world. This is getting good information at a critical hour out to the world. That's what we do. And we do it by the power and the authority and the name of Jesus Christ. And we look at world events through the lens of the Bible. And so if you appreciate that, take a moment, let us know. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. We have box 48184, which is our snail mail, and it will get to us, Queensborough, New Westminster, BC, V3M0A7. Thank you so much. And of course, you get an income tax receipt at the end of the year, because we are a charitable organization, and our mission and goal is to bring the gospel of Jesus Christ forward, to let people know how we survive these indeed last days. Thank you so much for all of that. Let me just share a couple of things with you. Peter was an apostle, and he absolutely loved Jesus, but he was sort of a loud guy. And ultimately, Peter, the disciple, he ended up dying upside down. What was the name of that movie, JT, that we just watched? Quo Vadis? Quo Vadis, yeah. And this was an old movie made in like 1951. And it was the story really of Peter, and then there as well was Paul the Apostle. It was a great story. Did we get something? Oh, from who? Billy Jack. Thank you so much for your donation. We love you, Billy Jack. Thank you. And Peter ended up having to, his life, he was martyred. He was martyred for his faith in Jesus. He refused to renounce who Jesus was. He saw the crucifixion. He denied Christ during the crucifixion, but at the end of his life, he would not deny Christ. It cost him everything. But you know, he's waiting for us one day. And he says in 1 Peter, he wrote this book, and he says, suffering for doing good. And if anyone understood that, it was Peter at the end of his life. Because even though he was the one who kind of betrayed Christ, and Jesus told him, you know, you're so cocky, but actually before that rooster crows 3 times, you're going to deny me. And 1 Peter 3 verse 8 says, finally, all of you be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble. Could somebody call Tedros and let him know these words? Klaus Schwab, he said that people were going to get angrier and angrier. Could you let Klaus Schwab know that he's not following the Bible, that he is supposed to be sympathetic, loving, and compassionate, and humble? Wow. Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing. So I think what this is saying is that if we give blessings, and if we offer love, and if we do not repay evil with evil, but in fact use the power of love to overcome evil, that we are going to inherit a blessing. And it says, whoever would love life and see good days must keep their tongue from evil and their lips from deceitful speech. Lying is such an offense to God. Lying is an offense to you as an individual. Once people determine that you're just a liar, then they don't trust you. So it's so important that you're a man and a woman of your word, that you do not embrace lies or falsehoods. And they must turn from evil and do good. They must seek peace and pursue it. For the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are attentive to their prayer. But listen to this. But the face of the Lord is against those who do evil. And that's where we have our hope, that we are not the ones who have to deal with the bad evil dudes. The face of God is against those who do evil. Amen. See you next time. You know, it's not easy to deliver the truth of what our sick world is doing, but for some of us, we feel that we have no choice. Because if we are silent about these abominable things, then we are letting evil go unchecked, and we cannot do that. For those of you wonderful people who are writing me and are sharing your encouragement, I am deeply grateful. Thank you for all the letters that you've been sending. Thank you for the donations and the support. I found out that in order to speak the truth, you have to become very, very strong. If you would go to my website at www.laura-lynn.tv, you'll find all of the ways that you can contact me. Remember, my friends, all is well. All is well. Thanks for joining me.